took drones mere seconds to kill all 11 Russians, deploying from a BTR-82 vehicle outside Pokrovsk. Ukrainian drones were watching the whole time, as a lone Russian BTR-82 wheeled fighting vehicle raced across the shell-pocked no-man's land in broad daylight outside Pokrovsk recently. Firing its autocannon as it moved, the vehicle succeeded in reaching the ruins of a building. The 11 Russian infantry packed surely didn't know the drones were waiting directly overhead. They didn't know, as they piled out of the vehicle, they had seconds to live. The drones from the Ukrainian 5th Assault Brigade dropped bombs on the hapless infantry, killing all 11. The small, unsupported, and doomed assault is indicative of wider trends across the 800-mile front line of Russia's wider war on Ukraine, as the conflict grinds into its 36th month. Attacks might last a few minutes before most or all of the attackers are dead or wounded. Many Russian recruits die within days of deploying to the front line. The Ukrainians' overwhelming drone advantage doesn't mean they're winning the war, but it might be preventing them from losing, as Russia continues mobilizing more soldiers and marching them into battle with less and less support. The lucky Russians ride in the dwindling number of armored vehicles. The Russian forces face significant challenges in their assaults in their eastern flanking attempt around Pokrovsk, due to stiff Ukrainian defenses, attempting to encircle the city with a massive mechanized assault. However, elite Ukrainian drone units ensured that no Russian vehicle could make it to Ukrainian lines, as Russians were caught out in the open. With their western flanking attempt stalling, Russian commanders sought to bypass urban combat by pushing through the rural terrain near Vozdvizhenka. Russians continue to try to avoid a prolonged urban battle, as Russians lack the manpower and equipment to sustain heavy losses in house-to-house fighting. Afraid of Pokrovsk becoming a second Bakhmut, where months of grinding combat led to catastrophic Russian losses and a complete culmination of all frontline operations after taking the city, Russians prioritized a successful envelopment from the east that would allow to isolate Pokrovsk without engaging in bloody urban combat. Ukraine's defenders were well prepared to counter the Russian assault. Thanks to intelligence from aerial reconnaissance and drone units, they anticipated the attack and positioned artillery and FPV drone teams accordingly. Ukrainian forces fired on the advancing Russian column from 3 directions, completely cutting them down before they could reach Ukrainian lines. One of the most effective units in this engagement was Magyar's Birds, one of Ukraine's most elite drone regiments, whose drone operators have been instrumental in recent battles, and their relentless attacks aimed at no Russian mechanized unit surviving long enough to reach Ukrainian lines. Not a single Russian vehicle reached the Ukrainian positions. Additionally, Russian infantry attempting to advance on foot were also cut down. The aftermath of the failed Russian offensives is clearly visible in Vozdvizhenka, where drone footage shows a landscape littered with burned-out Russian vehicles, with their sheer number highlighting the futility of their approach. Among the wreckage are so-called Frankenstein vehicles, makeshift armored carriers cobbled together from salvaged parts. These desperate improvisations underscore Russia's logistical struggles and continued inability to combat the Ukrainian drone threat. Overall, Russia's attempt to outflank Pokrovsk has resulted in heavy losses, with Ukrainian forces once again proving their ability to repel large-scale mechanized attacks. The Russians are still advancing, but every yard they capture costs them dearly. Russian war correspondent Roma Sapozhnikov expressed dismay recently when he learned that many recruits survived just a week after signing their contracts. Just 8 days from signing to death, Russia suffered 434,000 casualties, including 150,000 dead in 24. That's more killed and injured Russian troops than in the previous 2 years combined. Total Russian casualties since February 22 could be close to 800,000. Ukrainian losses since early 22 are much lower, 43,000 killed and 370,000 injured, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said in December. In the best defended sectors, the Ukrainians kill 7 Russians for every Ukrainian soldier the Russians kill. Russian assault groups are practically suicide bombers, according to the defector. On average, he said, just 1 out of 5 infantry survive an assault. In that sense, the 11-person squad the Ukrainian 5th Assault Battalion massacred outside Pokrovsk recently was only slightly less lucky than the typical Russian squad.